What happens when the paths of a former royal cross with America's most outspoken host and their interaction takes an entirely unexpected turn? Today, we delve into that sensational episode which sparked a wave of discussion when Meghan Markle appeared on one of the highest-rated talk shows, and the studio atmosphere transformed from restrained politeness to a point of no return in mere minutes. This story will undoubtedly make audiences rethink established notions of daytime television and reveal how thin the line is between an interview and an outright confrontation. The dazzling studio lights came on as Meghan Markle gracefully stepped onto the set, illuminating the space with her signature flawless smile. She greeted the audience, and a roar of applause swept through the studio. However, despite the visible warmth, a subtle tension hung in the air, a premonition of what was to come. Whoopi Goldberg, a seasoned host, no stranger to controversy and known for her direct style, leaned back in her chair with the air of someone who had seen it all and was ready for anything. With an authoritative, no-nonsense greeting, Whoopi Goldberg began the encounter. "Welcome, Meghan. We are truly delighted to have you in our studio." In response, Meghan Markle, radiating impeccable grace and sophistication, thanked her for the invitation. "Thank you so much, Whoopi. I have always admired your achievements and the significant impact you have on the world." She settled casually into her chair, as if she had been preparing for this moment her entire life. Joy Behar, another host, joined the conversation with her characteristic enthusiasm, setting the tone. "So, Meghan, let's discuss your latest ventures. You have so many exciting things happening right now: podcasts, captivating Netflix projects. How do you manage to balance it all while remaining so productive?" Meghan's eyes lit up as she began her prepared and meticulously polished answer, demonstrating confidence and professionalism. "You know, Joy, the secret is finding your true voice and using your platform for positive change in the world, to foster social transformation. Harry and I are thrilled to have these unique opportunities to tell important stories and draw attention to issues that require urgent resolution." Sarah Haynes, another key figure on the show, approvingly supported the flow of conversation, delving deeper into the topic. She noted that Meghan actively used her celebrity to promote ideals of social justice and asked how important it was for her to use her influence to support causes she genuinely believed in. Meghan responded with unwavering confidence, emphasizing its paramount importance. Her voice grew more convinced, reflecting a deep personal conviction about using her platform for positive change. She stated that she had always considered having a platform an inherent responsibility, and noted that even before marrying into the royal family, she actively advocated for women's rights, equality, and social justice. At this moment, Whoopi Goldberg's expression underwent subtle changes. Those familiar with her demeanor could sense new ideas brewing in her mind, portending a shift in the conversation's direction. Whoopi Goldberg suggested Meghan move on to discussing her experience within the royal family, noting the seriousness of her accusations of racism within that institution and emphasizing the need for clarification. The atmosphere in the studio seemed to electrify, a palpable tension hanging in the air, as if the temperature had dropped several degrees. A shadow flickered across Meghan's face, a faint reflection of the emotions raging within. But she quickly composed herself, presenting a picture of composure to the world. "Whoopi, I find it fundamentally important to draw a line between the institution itself and individual members of the royal family. I have never claimed that the entire family is universally racist. That would be a gross misrepresentation of my words and intentions," she stated, emphasizing each word. "However, you did mention concerns raised about your future child's skin color," Whoopi countered, her voice now direct and uncompromising, allowing no room for misinterpretation. Surely such things don't become topics of public discussion unless you are directly trying to accuse someone of racism. I simply shared my personal truth, spoke about the conversations that took place, Meghan retorted, a clear defensive tone in her voice. I believe it's important for the public to understand the reality of the trials we went through and the difficulties we faced. Sunny Hostin, one of the talk show hosts, sensing the brewing storm, quickly intervened, attempting to steer the conversation into a more neutral direction. Meghan, many people admire your courage in speaking openly about issues. What would you say to critics who believe you should have chosen a different path, remaining in the shadows and avoiding publicity? Whoopi Goldberg, however, was not about to back down and was fully determined to stand her ground. Here's what I completely failed to understand, Meghan. You were fully aware of what you were getting into when you married into the royal family. This isn't some new organization that popped up yesterday. The British monarchy has over 1,000 years of history behind it. It has its customs, its centuries-old traditions, its strict etiquette. Internal tension was clearly visible on Meghan Markle's face. Whoopi, I think that's too superficial a view of the situation. Just because something has been practiced a certain way for a long time doesn't automatically make it right or fair. I'm not saying it's good or bad, Whoopi retorted sharply. Her voice had a steely edge. I'm simply stating the fact that this is how things are. And if you intend to marry into this family, you must be aware of what you're getting into, what obligations and limitations it imposes. Complete silence fell in the studio. Everyone present felt a sharp shift in the atmosphere, as if an invisible electric spark had pierced the space. Like a panther about to pounce, Meghan sharply leaned forward in her chair. Her usually flawless mask of diplomacy showed a noticeable crack, hinting at an emotional storm about to erupt before the astonished audience. With a hint of indignation in her voice, addressing her opponent, she blurted out, "Whoopi, please tell me, are your words a call for surrender to racism, disguised as respect for tradition?" Whoopi, without losing a second, instantly countered, emphasizing that Meghan should have anticipated all potential pitfalls and prepared for the challenges. She unequivocally stated that what was happening was not a harmless word game, but a harsh reality, full of serious and unpredictable consequences. In this tense moment, with sparks flying, Alyssa Farah Griffin attempted to inject a note of peacemaking into their heated debate, beginning her remark with, "I think, Whoopi, perhaps you mean..." However, Meghan, not allowing her to finish her thought, decisively cut her off. Meghan's voice, slightly strengthened, insistently demanded that Whoopi finish her thought completely. She clearly yearned to hear the precise formulation of what, in Whoopi's opinion, she should have done in this situation. In response, Whoopi's eyes narrowed, like a sniper's scope, indicating she was ready for further verbal combat. Whoopi Goldberg, answering Meghan Markle's direct question, expressed the opinion that Meghan had entered her new reality with unrealistic expectations. Faced with the discrepancy between her dream and harsh reality, Meghan, Whoopi believed, chose a radical path of destruction rather than painstaking work to transform the system from within. A ringing silence fell in the television studio, broken only by tense anticipation. Meghan's fragile mask of composure cracked, and this dramatic transformation unfolded in real time. Digging her fingers into the armrests of her chair, Meghan fixed Whoopi with an incinerating gaze, full of undisguised astonishment. "Burn it all down?" she repeated with a note of disbelief in her voice. "Do you really think that?" Whoopi, maintaining her composure, countered with a question, emphasizing the scale of what had been done. She reminded Meghan of the scandalous interview she gave, one of the highest rated in television history, where she unequivocally voiced her grievances against the British monarchy. Whoopi concluded that if such a move wasn't an act of burning bridges, then she struggled to find a more fitting definition. In response to the criticism, Meghan stated that she had merely presented her version of events, with a more insistent tone clearly audible in her voice. She emphasized that her goal was to share her personal experience and the difficulties she had endured. She then addressed Whoopi with a direct question, expressing bewilderment as to whether Whoopi truly believed she should have remained silent and concealed the truth. Whoopi, without losing her composure, countered, noting that there were alternative approaches to resolving conflicts within a family that did not involve airing private problems on international television. She expressed the opinion that Meghan could have attempted to resolve the disagreements in a confidential setting, or, at least, given the situation a chance to resolve itself naturally, allowing more time for reconciliation. At the climax of the discussion, when Joy attempted to contribute and ease the rising tension by saying, "Perhaps we should," Meghan decisively cut her off, her gaze fixed on Whoopi. With unwavering confidence, she declared her intention to push back against the accusations and defend her position. Addressing Whoopi directly, Meghan focused on her words about needing more time, and, turning to her, asked rhetorical questions full of bitterness and disappointment. How much time, in your opinion, should a person dedicate to an institution that systematically inflicts suffering upon them? How long was I supposed to remain silent while my mental health steadily deteriorated under the weight of circumstances? Whoopi Goldberg, as if responding to the emotional wave emanating from Meghan Markle, leaned forward, signaling her readiness for further discussion. She responsibly acknowledged the importance of mental health, assuring that she in no way diminished its significance or seriousness. However, the actress emphasized that Meghan, as a mature and independent individual, made conscious decisions. Whoopi reminded the audience that Markle voluntarily married into the royal family, aware of the potential consequences of that step. But did I really know what awaited me? Meghan's voice began to noticeably rise, betraying her growing agitation. Her usually restrained and carefully modulated speech gradually gave way to a torrent of genuine emotion. She insisted that no one had warned her about the specific consequences she would face, in particular, the constant criticism hounding her in literally every action, from how she held her hand on her stomach to her breakfast choices. "Those are the rules of the game when you marry a prince," Whoopi stated with a hint of indifference, adding that it was an inherent part of such a position. "Is racism part of that unspoken agreement too?" Meghan countered indignantly, demonstrating the full depth of her outrage. "Do you really want to convince me of that?" she added, casting a defiant glance. A tense silence fell among the hosts, broken only by awkward glances exchanged between them. Sarah, sensing the need to diffuse the tension, attempted to intervene in the escalating dispute. She timidly suggested that the intensity of the discussion might be due to the interlocutors not quite correctly interpreting each other's words. However, Whoopi, not allowing her to finish, decisively cut her off. "No, Sarah," she retorted, "I'm sure we understand perfectly what we're talking about." Addressing Meghan directly, Whoopi emphasized her decades of colossal experience in the entertainment industry. She acknowledged that throughout her career, she had repeatedly encountered manifestations of racism and discrimination. But, Whoopi added, she had learned an important lesson from these encounters. To achieve real change, it's often necessary to act from within the system rather than simply fleeing from it, trying to find salvation elsewhere. Meghan's eyes seemed to flash with righteous anger. "Run away? Do you seriously think I ran away?" she exclaimed, barely concealing her indignation. Meghan reminded those present of her decision to step back from royal duties, her move from the UK to America, and the subsequent tell-all interview where she presented her version of events. If my actions don't fall under the definition of running away, then how would you propose to categorize them? She rhetorically asked. I view it as an act of protecting my family, Meghan declared, her voice filled with undisguised resentment. She emphasized that the decision to leave the royal family was dictated by concern for her mental health, rather than a desire to remain within a system that, in her opinion, had a destructive effect on her. But here's what puzzles me, Whoopi countered, without softening the intensity of her questions. She brought up Meghan's words about protecting her family, but then expressed concern for the fate of Harry's family. Whoopi cast doubt on how this interview would affect Harry's relationship with his father and brother, which, in her opinion, had already suffered. Meghan was visibly stunned by this turn of events. Is Whoopi suggesting I prioritize the well-being of others above my own? She asked with astonishment. I'm just saying that all actions always have certain consequences, Whoopi stated dryly, adding that these consequences often affect a much wider circle of people than just those who directly make decisions. An unprecedentedly heated argument erupted in the television studio when Meghan, jumping up from her seat, made a deafening scrape with her chair across the floor and unexpectedly addressed Whoopi. You know what, Whoopi, she began, barely concealing her disappointment. I expected something entirely different from participating in this show. I thought here I could find common ground with people capable of understanding all the difficulties and vicissitudes of life as a woman of color in a society where one doesn't always feel welcome. In response, Whoopi, also rising from her seat, sharply cut her off. Oh, don't you dare try to make this about race when it's about basic accountability. However, Meghan was not about to back down. Her voice, full of indignation, echoed through the studio. My entire life experience is inextricably linked to my racial identity. From the moment I started dating Harry, every single action of mine was viewed through the prism of my race. Whoopi, unwavering, challenged her. And you believe that gives you a carte blanche to say anything to anyone with impunity? A dead silence fell in the room. The audience, holding their breath, witnessed this unprecedented verbal battle. The other hosts seemed ready to sink through the floor from the awkwardness and tension that permeated the air. Meghan's voice held unwavering resolve as she stated that she didn't need anyone's permission to speak her truth. She emphasized that sharing her personal experience was her inherent right, requiring no one's approval. Whoopi, however, countered, focusing on the responsibility for one's words. She stressed that one cannot carelessly make grand statements in public and expect them to be without consequences. In response, Meghan, with a bitter smile, inquired about consequences, offering to discuss those she had endured as part of that family. She touched upon suicidal thoughts, lack of support, and an oppressive sense of isolation. Whoopi, softening her tone, expressed regret for what Meghan had experienced, but noted that it could not serve as justification for her subsequent behavior. Meghan, with a note of disbelief in her voice, rejected the need to justify herself. She stated that she had survived, escaped a difficult situation, and protected her children. If that fact caused anyone concern, then in her opinion, that was no longer her problem. Whoopi's gaze, directed across the table at Meghan, hardened and promised nothing good. There it is. That's not my problem. That's exactly the attitude I'm talking about, she declared. What attitude exactly? Meghan retorted sharply, her hands betraying the seething indignation within her. The stance of a woman who refused to remain silent. The behavior of someone who prioritized her own interests over an organization that was destroying her. The stance of someone who places themselves above all accountability. Whoopi cut in, her words like a blade, slicing through the tense silence of the studio. Meghan, you constantly strive to portray yourself as a victim of circumstances, but sometimes, just occasionally, It wouldn't hurt to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what is my role in all of this? Meghan's face flushed with indignation. You completely misunderstand what you're talking about. You weren't there. You didn't experience what I had to go through. You're right, I wasn't there, Whoopi conceded. However, I observed the situation from the outside, and I only see someone who was dealt all the cards but gave it all up as soon as difficulties arose. Gave it up? Meghan's voice held genuine astonishment. I had suicidal thoughts. I was on the verge of despair. But of course, let's call that giving up opportunities. A ringing silence fell in the television studio. Even the incomparable Whoopi seemed, for a fraction of a second, taken aback by the raw pain in Meghan's voice, but she quickly composed herself. Mental health issues are not fabrications, but a harsh reality that demands attention, Whoopi stated, her voice imbued with measured confidence. But to hide behind one's mental state, shielding oneself from any criticism, is fundamentally wrong and simply unfair. Hiding behind it? Meghan swiftly moved closer to the side of the table where Whoopi sat. Her voice dropped to an ominous whisper. Do you really believe that my revelations about the darkest periods of my life are merely an attempt to use them as some kind of shield? I believe you transformed your pain into a weapon of vengeance, Whoopi stated unequivocally. And that is fundamentally different from true healing. The other hosts looked utterly stunned. Joy opened her mouth several times, as if trying to speak, but no words came out. Sarah despairingly covered her face with her hands. Sunny seemed to be watching a horrific car crash in slow motion. Transformed my pain into a weapon? Meghan echoed. Her voice was barely audible, but rage seethed within it. Is that how you refer to speaking truth to power? Is that how you define standing your ground? Unflinchingly, Whoopi confirmed that she had questions regarding the presented version of events, emphasizing the need for a comprehensive review of the situation. Meghan's gaze was fixed on Whoopi. Her chest, like an agitated bird, rose and fell rapidly. Suddenly, as if to discharge the tense atmosphere, she performed an action that caught all witnesses off guard. Her fingers began to unclip her microphone. What's happening? Joy finally broke the silence, forcing out the words. My work here is done, Meghan countered with disarming simplicity, unfastening the tiny device from her outfit. She demonstratively withdrew her participation from the proceedings. Whoopi, arms crossed, uttered words full of hidden meaning. And again, a retreat. Meghan froze, as if struck by lightning. Her hand still clutched the microphone. She sharply turned to Whoopi, and her voice when she spoke sounded like an Arctic wind. You know what, Whoopi? On one point, you are absolutely right. She no longer intends to waste energy explaining herself to those who have already rendered their biased verdict. She is tired of justifying her decisions to those who were not witnesses to what happened, who did not endure similar experiences, who have no idea what it is like when one's very right to exist is questioned and mercilessly criticized daily. With deliberate care, as if preparing for an important declaration, she placed the microphone on the table surface. I came here with a naive belief in the possibility of openly sharing what I've been through, to talk about the personal experience that shaped my life. But instead, I'm facing an interrogation, as if I'm in the dock, accused of a crime whose motive was the protection of my own family. Meghan, please. Sarah desperately tried to restore the fragile balance, to act as a peacemaker, but Meghan cut her off with a gesture of her hand. No, Sarah, this is exactly what she's talking about. This pervasive notion that she owes everyone an account for every decision she makes, and the absurd idea that her pain needs someone else's external validation before it can be recognized as genuine and real. She fixed a direct, piercing gaze, unblinking, on Whoopi, as if challenging her to a duel. If you wish to question her truthfulness, then don't hesitate. Go ahead. If you intend to diminish the significance of her personal experiences, then please be my guest, but she is not obligated to remain here and listen to such treatment. Whoopi's face remained inscrutable, as if carved from stone, showing not the slightest sign of emotion. So she's leaving, displaying the same pattern of behavior as when she left the royal family, or when she abandoned her successful acting career as soon as the situation demanded more effort and commitment. Her words carried a hidden reproach, a hint of inconsistency, and an unwillingness to face difficulties. Meghan paused at the very edge of the stage, her back turned to the stunned quintet of hosts. Without even a fleeting glance at them, she declared to the audience with resolve and unwavering confidence, "No, Whoopi, she's putting herself first again, and she won't feel guilty about her choice anymore." With those words, seemingly carved in stone, she swiftly exited the stage, leaving behind not only an astonished audience, but also the group of hosts whose faces reflected a mix of bewilderment and shock, as if they had involuntarily witnessed an epochal event in television history. The ensuing silence was so thick it could be cut with a knife, until Whoopi, gathering herself, stated with a hint of bewilderment, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, it seems this is the finale." Camera lenses continued to dispassionately record the scene, and final credits began to roll on screen, immortalizing the bewildered faces of the remaining hosts and audience members who seemed yet to fully grasp the magnitude of what had transpired. As the studio doors silently closed behind Meghan, the atmosphere inside reached a peak of tension. It felt as if electricity crackled in the very air. In the control room, chaos reigned. Producers frantically tried to find a way out of the situation, desperately brainstorming how to fill the sudden void in airtime. The executive producer, a woman who had dedicated 3 decades of her life to the television industry, stood frozen before the flickering monitors, realizing she had just witnessed a moment that would forever enter the annals of television. Her hands trembled slightly as she gave instructions to the camera operators to keep filming, understanding that history was being written right then. After the show's main guest departed, Whoopi, remaining at her place at the host's table, slowly leaned back in her chair. A complex range of emotions played across her face, revealing both satisfaction from the conversation's conclusion and a slight regret about what had transpired. Known for her firm convictions, even she felt this discussion had been more intense than anticipated. Joy appeared to have just weathered a storm. Her movements were nervous as she shuffled her notes, trying to steer the show back to its usual course. Sarah, lost in thought, seemed to be trying to retreat from reality. Sunny, meanwhile, kept her gaze fixed on the door through which Meghan had just exited, as if hoping she would return and declare the whole thing a joke. In the studio, where hundreds of spectators had gathered, a silence fell, broken only by quiet whispers. Many in attendance held their cell phones at the ready, understanding they had just witnessed an event that would go down in history. The whispers in the hall gradually intensified, turning into a barely perceptible hum. Security personnel, sensing trouble, took up positions of heightened readiness to prevent any potential unrest or attempts by audience members to leave their seats. Backstage, in the labyrinthine corridors of the TV studio, Meghan Markle found herself encircled by her entourage, a team of devoted assistants and vigilant bodyguards. Traces of the recent confrontation were still visible on her face, like brushstrokes on a canvas, but notes of clear relief mingled with the simmering anger. Years of rigorous training aimed at reining in emotions under the glare of spotlights and camera lenses seemed to have vanished. On this day, something inside her broke, and she unleashed her true feelings, no longer hiding them behind a facade of polite cordiality. A young assistant, who had worked closely with her for several years, approached with concern in his eyes, but she merely shook her head, indicating it was not the time for discussion. The online community's reaction was swift and resounding. Hashtags related to Meghan Markle and Whoopi Goldberg instantly soared to the top of Twitter trends, surpassing all other topics even before the show's final credits appeared on screen. Internet users, like a swarm of excited paparazzi, shared short but vivid video clips of the interview's most intense moments, proliferating memes and scathing comments at an incredible pace. Some lauded Meghan's courage, seeing her actions as a long-awaited display of strength and dignity, while others lambasted her for allegedly being unable to adequately answer tough but fair questions. Within just half an hour of the incident, social media mentions exceeded 1 million, transforming the discussion into a churning ocean of opinions. In the world of celebrities, serious debates erupted, dividing public opinion into two opposing camps. Oprah Winfrey, the renowned TV host who had previously conducted an intimate interview with Meghan and Harry, expressed her support for the Duchess of Sussex on Instagram. She posted an inspiring message, emphasizing the strength and courage required to make the decision to walk away. At the same time, several other prominent figures expressed admiration for Whoopi, commending her professionalism and fearlessness in asking tough questions. The media did not remain on the sidelines of this high-profile event. Leading news channels such as CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC promptly interrupted their scheduled programming to provide breaking news coverage dedicated to the incident. Royal family experts, etiquette specialists, seasoned psychologists, and media analysts actively shared their opinions live, aiming to shed light on various aspects of what had occurred. Some highlighted the historical significance of the moment, as it was the first time a member of the royal family had ever walked out of a live television interview. Dr. Susan Davis, a qualified clinical psychologist specializing in trauma therapy, appeared on CNN to explain the psychological underpinnings of the incident to viewers. She noted that Meghan's observed reaction was a classic example of a defense mechanism in someone pushed to their limit. According to her, individuals who have experienced trauma can be re-traumatized in public settings, triggering an instinctive fight-or-flight response. In this case, Meghan chose flight, which, in Dr. Davis's opinion, was a perfectly healthy reaction to the situation. The global community also did not stand by, reacting vividly to the unfolding scandal. British media, which had closely followed Meghan Markle's every move for years, predictably showed heightened interest in the situation. The Daily Mail immediately released a special edition with the sensational headline, "Meghan on the Run Again," while The Guardian published a more restrained analytical article examining the power dynamics brought up in the controversial interview. Journalists from The Sun, seizing the opportunity, presented readers with a series of articles featuring nonverbal communication experts who meticulously analyzed every movement and facial expression of the participants in the high-profile confrontation. Buckingham Palace, typically refraining from commenting on Meghan and Harry's actions, found itself facing a difficult dilemma. The palace press secretary urgently convened a meeting with royal advisers to develop an effective strategy for responding to the situation. Ultimately, the decision was made to issue a concise statement. The palace does not intend to comment on the personal affairs of members of the royal family. However, according to confidential sources, Queen Elizabeth II was deeply disturbed by the new surge of public attention on family matters. At his California estate in Montecito, Prince Harry anxiously watched the unfolding events. Knowing his wife inside and out, he understood that Meghan would not have taken such a decisive step without compelling reasons. Years spent under the scrutiny of cameras had taught him to unerringly identify moments when the burden of public attention became unbearable. Without losing a moment, he canceled all his scheduled meetings and rushed home to support Meghan. Arriving at their quiet sanctuary, Harry found Meghan in their secluded garden, lost in contemplation of the ocean vistas. There were no tears, no shouts, just absolute silence as she tried to process what had happened. Harry walked over to her and silently sat down beside her, gently taking her hand. "You did what you had to do," he said softly. "I'm proud of you. Chill." These words, uttered by a man who more than anyone understood the immense weight of living under relentless public scrutiny, meant more to Meghan than any grand declarations of support. Several hours after the incident, more measured and balanced analytical pieces began to appear in the information space. Michael Thompson, a professor of media studies at Harvard University, published a comprehensive article examining the incident through the lens of power dynamics. Today, we witnessed a clash of two diametrically opposed approaches to addressing trauma and publicity, he wrote. Whoopi Goldberg represents the old school of journalism, where asking uncomfortable questions is considered a sacred duty, regardless of the interviewee's feelings. Meghan Markle, in turn, represents a new generation that believes trauma must be acknowledged and respected, not subjected to interrogation. Feminist figures and women's rights advocates actively joined the unfolding polemic. Renowned activist Gloria Steinem, who has dedicated her life to the fight for equality, expressed unwavering support for Meghan Markle in her interview. She emphasized that women, especially those from racial minorities, have for many years faced pressure and criticism for their life choices and emotional expressions. Steinem noted that Meghan demonstrated every woman's right to set her own boundaries and withdraw from situations when those boundaries are violated. In contrast, some critics of the feminist movement used this incident as an illustration of the so-called victim culture. They argued that Meghan Markle, by exploiting her victim status, was attempting to evade responsibility for her own actions. An equally lively discussion erupted within academic circles. The incident involving Meghan Markle immediately became an object of intense scrutiny for scholars. Universities introduced special courses in media studies, psychology, and sociology dedicated to analyzing this event. Dr. Sarah Johnson, a professor at Yale University, organized a specialized seminar aimed at studying the incident as a vivid example of the intersection of racial, class, and gender aspects in contemporary American society. Professor Johnson noted that this case provided a unique opportunity to explore how various forms of privilege and discrimination interact in the public sphere. Prominent religious figures also actively joined the discussion. Reverend Al Sharpton, the renowned civil rights activist, issued a statement calling for constructive dialogue and a deep reflection on how the echoes of past traumatic experiences influence modern human relationships. To support his words, he organized a prayer meeting at his church in Harlem, dedicated to achieving healing and reconciliation in society. At the same time, some conservative religious leaders criticized Meghan, perceiving a lack of humility and repentance in her behavior. The economic consequences of the escalating conflict were not long in coming and became apparent within the first few days after the incident. Shares of ABC City, which broadcasts The View, began to show instability as investors tried to predict the long-term impact of the incident on the company's reputation and future earnings. A number of advertisers expressed concern about the undesirable association of their brands with the controversial content. However, there were also those who saw an opportunity in the situation to attract additional attention to their products. The View's ratings soared to unprecedented heights, as millions of viewers eagerly tuned in to watch replays of the scandalous episode and subsequent studio discussions. This episode profoundly impacted the professional trajectories of both women. For Meghan Markle, this event served as a catalyst, solidifying her image as an individual who firmly adheres to her convictions. Her public relations team shifted into intensive mode, developing a multifaceted strategy to navigate the crisis. The decision was made to refrain from immediate statements, allowing the public to form their own opinions about what had transpired. This tactical move proved insightful, as a significant portion of the audience showed understanding and expressed support for her stance. As for Whoopi Goldberg, the incident highlighted her unwavering resolve as a journalist, but simultaneously raised questions about her capacity for empathy. The View's producers immediately convened a meeting with Whoopi to discuss the most effective ways to respond to the public outcry. Goldberg took a firm stance, emphasizing that she was merely performing her professional duty by asking difficult but necessary questions. "I am not going to apologize for doing my job," she told the producers. The next day, The View faced a challenging decision, whether to discuss the incident live or attempt to shift to other topics. Ultimately, it was decided to dedicate the initial segment of the show to discussing the incident, but without Whoopi Goldberg's participation. Joy Behar, Sarah Haynes, and Sunny Hostin led a nuanced discussion, aiming to present various perspectives on the situation without taking sides. In the wake of the ill-fated incident, numerous parodies and satirical sketches, aiming to interpret the events through the lens of humor, sprang up like mushrooms after rain. The famous show Saturday Night Live did not hold back, presenting viewers with a sketch in which comedic actresses transformed into Meghan and Whoopi, recreating key moments of the incident. Despite the comedic effect, the sketch inadvertently highlighted the seriousness of the issues raised. Late-night talk shows, such as The Tonight Show and The Late Show, also seized the opportunity to use the incident as material for jokes, though many comedians exercised caution in their remarks, recognizing the sensitivity of the topic. At the same time, documentarians and filmmakers began developing projects aimed at more deeply exploring the events of that day and their consequences. Production companies actively approached representatives of both sides of the conflict, Meghan and Whoopi, offering collaboration on documentaries, seeking to capture various perspectives on what occurred. Publishing houses also showed keen interest in potential books about the incident, anticipating commercial success and the opportunity to attract a wide audience. Psychologists and trauma experts also weighed in, using the incident as an educational platform to study the psychological aspects of traumatic events. Dr. Judith Herman, a recognized authority in the field of post-traumatic stress disorder, published an article in the New York Times explaining how trauma can influence people's behavior in stressful situations. She emphasized that Meghan's reaction was not merely an emotional outburst, but rather a defense mechanism developed as a result of past trauma. A month after the memorable incident, both women decided to break their heavy silence and present their versions of events. Meghan, in a candid conversation with a longtime friend, a well-known journalist, thoroughly explained the motives behind her behavior. "I realized I could no longer subject myself to painful experiences, becoming an object of public entertainment," she stated. "My maternal duty and the care of my own mental well-being are immeasurably more important than any public expectations." The interview took place in an atmosphere of mutual support and trust, allowing Meghan to fully articulate her position. Whoopi, in turn, opted for a more open format of communication with her audience. In a special episode of the popular talk show The View, she addressed viewers directly. "I want to be clear. "My questions were not intended to cause anyone pain or trigger traumatic memories," she emphasized. "As a journalist, I see my role as asking uncomfortable questions, especially to those who hold power and influence. However, I recognize that there are more delicate ways to achieve that goal." This incident inevitably affected relationships within the royal family. Palace insiders reported deep concern from Prince William and Prince Charles regarding the new surge of public attention on this topic. They expressed fears that what had happened could provoke another wave of criticism directed at the monarchy. At the same time, some family members, notably Princess Anne and the Earl of Wessex, showed understanding of the complex situation. A month after the high-profile incident, sociological studies revealed an intriguing picture of public opinion in the United States. American society was almost evenly divided. 40% of respondents expressed solidarity with Meghan, while 42% sided with Whoopi, and 10% of participants could not definitively formulate their position. Notably, the survey results also showed clear demographic differences in the perception of what had occurred. Younger women and ethnic minorities more frequently expressed support for Meghan, while older viewers and those with conservative views primarily supported Whoopi. This incident had a noticeable impact on the entire daytime television industry. Executives and producers of other talk shows began actively re-evaluating their interview methods, especially when dealing with guests who had experienced traumatic events. Some television programs introduced new rules and procedures, requiring prior agreement on sensitive and delicate topics with invited celebrities and their representatives. Legal scholars and experts also weighed in, carefully examining the situation from a legal perspective. Although no lawsuits were filed, some legal professionals opined that the incident could potentially serve as grounds for defamation or emotional distress claims. Nevertheless, most experts agreed that such claims would be extremely difficult to prove in court, given the specific context of a public interview. No less attention was drawn to the impact of the incident on the family's younger generation. Archie and Lilibet, Meghan's children, due to their young age, did not grasp the magnitude of the unfolding drama, but in the future they would inevitably face the echoes of this high-profile event. Child psychology specialists strongly advised parents to proactively devise a strategy for answering the inevitable questions that would arise as the children grew older. The incident served as a catalyst for a broad public discussion about the role of trauma in the public sphere. Psychologists and public figures used this precedent as an opportunity to educate society about the influence of traumatic experiences on human behavior. Seminars and conferences dedicated to the principles of trauma-informed communication and the need to create a safe and supportive environment for those who have experienced trauma became widespread. International media also did not stay away from this topic. In France, Germany, Australia, and other countries, popular talk shows analyzed the incident within the context of their specific media cultures. Some European journalists criticized the American style of interviewing, considering it overly aggressive, while others defended journalists' right to ask tough questions. 6 months after the memorable incident, its repercussions continued to be felt in society. Meghan and Harry, seizing the moment, launched a new initiative aimed at protecting the mental health of those who become targets of public scrutiny. Their endeavor was directed at providing support to individuals experiencing difficult times when their lives become objects of intense public attention. Whoopi, in turn, became more circumspect in her conversations with the press, though she continued to emphasize the importance of journalistic integrity. This incident also influenced how the media covers the lives of members of the royal family. Many publications re-evaluated their editorial principles, especially concerning Meghan and Harry. Some implemented new standards, advocating a more balanced and delicate approach to covering the lives of royal representatives. Educational institutions also did not stand aside, adopting this incident as teaching material. Journalism departments began incorporating it into their courses on journalistic ethics, viewing it as a vivid example of the challenges in balancing the need to ask tough questions with the display of humanity. Psychology departments used this case to educate students on various manifestations of trauma in different life situations. A year after the memorable incident, fate brought the two women together again at a private event in Los Angeles. Their interaction was fleeting, but marked by mutual courtesy, which many interpreted as a sign that the former tension between them had significantly eased. And while they did not become close friends, this incident, it seems, taught them both valuable lessons about the importance of effective communication and mutual understanding. This unprecedented episode in television history continues to profoundly influence our perception of critical issues such as psychological trauma, social privilege, journalistic ethics, and human dignity. It clearly demonstrated that even in an era of meticulously crafted public appearances, genuine human emotions can break through, creating moments of authentic drama and profound meaning. Furthermore, this incident highlighted the immense power of social media in shaping public opinion and showed how a single moment can fundamentally alter careers and lives. Perhaps the most important lesson to draw from this situation is the urgent need for a deeper understanding of how trauma impacts individuals and the importance of creating a safe space where everyone can share their experiences without fear of biased questions or judgment. This case also clearly showed that even the most seasoned professionals are not immune to mistakes and are capable of learning and growing through interactions with others, drawing valuable lessons from every experience.